So, Latoya, as we talk about all these topics, right, we've made connection between emotional regulation in childhood to adulthood impacts, right? As we talk about that, the world we live in is very fast paced, right? Like there's a lot to navigate. Like even when we compare to prior generations, right? My parents and their parents, and looking back, uh, everything's so much faster, and there's so much more that we navigate in the world. Can you talk about how the nature of the modern world affects people's ability to emotionally regulate and heal from trauma? Like, what is the connection and what is the impact of the world that we're living in, and how can we navigate it better?
Wow. So, like you said, it's such a fast-paced environment, and we're constantly inundated with all the negative things, the frustration. So what happens is because first off, through social media, the news, and everything, we see everything all over the world in real lifetime, right? And so we're taking on our own trauma, and then we're taking on secondhand trauma from just seeing what's going on and not being able to fully make a difference in those type of situations. We're feeling guilt if we're in a better situation, or we're feeling angry if we see a situation that's better. You know what I'm saying? There's all these different things
Mhm.
that you're navigating on a regular basis. And whether you're a child watching this from the perspective of these adults are dealing with this stuff and I can't do anything about it. And so what is going to happen to me? Or if you're an adult and like, what is going to happen to me as an adult? Like with all
Yeah.
these things going on, not to mention the fact of modern technology, trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to maintain um, just academic, economic leadership, just everything, right? So
Mhm.
all those things play a part because it can cause people to get anxious, anxiety, stress, frustration, because there's no one that really is able to live in the bubble, right?
Right.
So that's why it's so important to be able to have your outlets, whether it's exercise, whether it's yoga, whether it's a therapist. Just because you're talking to a counselor or a therapist does not mean you're crazy. We all need to be able to process. It could be a support group. It
Right.
could just be your homeboys. It could be your homegirl. It can be, that safe space. We all need safe spaces to be able to decompress and to process. Just like how back in the day they used to say, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time.
One bite at a
It's the
time.
same, it's the same thing with life overall. We have to take it one bite at a time. And today's society is like it's expected for you to take these huge gulps, and it becomes overwhelming. And that's why it's so challenging for people to self-regulate because it's so much coming at them at one time
Yeah.
that it's hard for them to take a breath to figure out even what is causing their anxiousness or what is causing their stress or what is causing their frustration because they're dealing with two, three, four things at a time. So
Right.
you have to allow yourself time to restructure, to just rejuvenate yourself.
Hmm. Okay. So if you I know you work with kids. I'm gonna take this, and I'm being a little selfish here. Let's try to put it in an adult setting, right? You're an adult, you're in the workforce, they call it 9 to 5, but most people aren't working a 9 to 5, and be real with you. Lots of people working extra hours above that, especially since we have remote work now and there's
Mm-hmm.
no commutes and the boundary between work and home is blurred. People are working a lot more hours now, I
Yeah.
believe. So, but
Mhm.
that being said, if that's your dynamic, what can you do as an adult, as a working adult? What are some habits you can adopt to help you emotionally regulate better during the day and manage your stress?
I have one word for you: boundaries.
Hmm.
You have to allow yourself to have boundaries. You have to set those boundaries and you have to stick to those boundaries. Now, I am working on that myself. So it's not something that is like an easy peasy automatic thing, but
Me
it's
too.
something that is necessary. And you can start off small. You can say, okay, I'm going to take my 30-minute lunch. Or I'm going to take my, 30-minute lunch and two breaks or my hour lunch.
Mhm.
I'm going to take that. So even if I'm working till 7 o'clock and I know at some point during the day, I've
Yeah.
taken a minute and I've stepped away from the computer. I've unplugged. I did whatever to woosah, whether it was go for a walk, whether it was stretch, whether it was, turn on some mindless TV. If that's what you like to do, whatever it is, that was away from work for an hour, whether
Okay.
it's a 30-minute and 2:15, whatever it is that you get, right? So that's one thing that you can do. It can be okay, at this particular time, that's my hard out. That's my hard clock out. Even though I'm working late, I'm supposed to get off at 4. Usually I work till like 5 or 6. Okay, but six o'clock is my hard stop.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Whatever that hard stop is, you have to let that be your hard stop. Set an alarm.
Okay.
That's your hard stop. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So things like that. Don't call me on the weekends. Whoever it is, whatever it is, I'm not at work on the weekends. Don't call me on the weekend. Unless it's an emergency. Now every job is different, but
Yes.
I'm saying depending on your job, your boundaries, you can set up some type of boundary. You may can't set up all three boundaries, but
Mhm.
there should be one of those boundaries that you can set up.
Okay. And what is the impact of a person setting a boundary and honoring that boundary instead of continually letting people push further and further across the line from where things should be?
So, do you fly? Have you ever flown before?
And
I'm sure you have. Okay. So, one of the things that they tell you is if in case of an emergency, you put your oxygen mask on first
Mhm.
before you help others, right?
Mhm.
We're constantly pouring out, whether it's you're pouring out with your colleagues at work, whether it's with your customers, whether it's with your family, we're constantly pouring out. You have to refill your tank. You have to pour back in because if you're depleted, you are not going to make good choices. If you're
Mm.
depleted, you're not going to be able to know when you're overwhelmed or versus when you're stressed out versus when you're angry, whatever the case may be. You're not
Mm.
going to even be able to really differentiate between those emotions, right?
Mhm.
You have to fill back up. And if you do so, you will be able to gain a better understanding of what's going on in your mind, what's going on with your emotions. And through that, remember, all emotions are valid. You have them for a reason.
Right.
You'll be able to have a better understanding of what choices you need to make due to those emotions. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So if your supervisor ticked you off and you're angry, right?
Yeah.
It may be for a good reason, but you need to have time to refill your bucket, to think about it, to decide, okay, do I need to schedule a meeting with my supervisor? Is it something that I need to hold myself accountable for that I did do? Or
Mhm.
is it something I need to talk to HR about? You know what I'm saying? Like, or do I need a career change? Right? But you can't do that if you're not true to yourself enough to set boundaries.
Outstanding. Outstanding. That's so true. And you said a lot, so I'm gonna just let that sit where it is. That's great advice. Can't nothing to add to that.